Hello, welcome back. Today I'm filming from my studio in New York. I've just got off a conference call with Elon Musk. Talked about AI. So Bill Gates dropped in on the call, but no, I'm still doing the chess, unfortunately. So I'm consigned to play the Hastings Chess Congress again, but that's not a bad thing. So I'm down to play the Hastings Chess Congress. So we can see here that the Hastings, this picture of Hastings, this looks to me like the old town. Because I think if you go down there, I think that's very near the old town. I think there's like the beach there. And I think going further down, you see the pier there on the right, further down, which is like the old pier, I think. It was renovated. Although the owner is quite controversial, as far as I'm aware. So there were a few issues with the owner. And I think from memory, there's even an Italian restaurant just down there at the bottom. But I played Hastings on many occasions. The chief organizer is now Stuart Conquest, which is a really good positive development because he's associated with the Gibraltar Chess Congress. He's also a very strong chess player. I played Stuart on a number of occasions. I had a bad score against him. I think because he was, from memory, he was a guy who would really get absorbed in the game. He was a bit of a perfectionist. And he would really get into time trouble. I think kind of similar to David Howell. I think David was someone I had a bad score against, but also much stronger than me. Well, Stuart was probably a bit stronger, but, not... he did get to 2600 at some point. But somebody I felt was similar in strength. But I would, he would get short time. I remember playing once in the foreign CL, it was the English opening, and he sacked the exchange on C6 or something. I thought I had a good position in the early middle game. He completely outplayed me, and I lost the game. And that kind of game stuck in my mind. I think the only time I beat him was maybe we played in the British and Torquay, and I beat him there. I think he also beat me in a tournament in Ireland. Funny enough, I've also agreed to play a tournament in Ireland, and it was Bunratty. It was someone like Bunratty or Kilkenny. I think it was Bunratty, actually, from memory. I think Luke McShane ended up winning the tournament. Or he was bang up there. He beat Tiviakov last round. Now, I played Stuart, and it was like some kind of Bishop B5 Sicilian. And he outplayed me in time trouble. He was better the whole game, maybe winning the whole game. I remember Luke McShane came up to me and it sort of said to me after the game, he said, "You're such a weak player." Which made me laugh, I'll be honest. But he sort of said it in a joking way, right? But he was kind of half meaning it. But it was a bad game by me. But I beat him in a Mind Sports rapid play, which wasn't really that important. I think it was held at a hotel in London. From memory, was it like a Nove Hotel? And I luckily beat him in a tournament in the British Championships one year. But I think overall he had quite a big plus score against me. Stuart's a really good guy. Been around in chess for many years. Lived in Spain for many years. Met one of his girlfriends on a ferry journey, I believe, to somewhere like Santander. But he was part of the organising committee for Gibraltar. But now he's doing Hastings. Gibraltar, I think they lost the sponsorship, some of the sponsorship. So that's a positive development. They've also beefed up the prizes. So maybe the money from the ECF, from the government, is coming into the ECF, because we're starting to see that now in the prize fund in British chess tournaments. And maybe I can have a look at some of those Stuart Conquest games at some point on this channel, because I like looking at old games. This is another game I'm going to mention. It's a game from... So my recommendation to you watching this video, please play Hastings Congress. Support the Hastings Chess Congress. There's plenty of tournaments there. If you don't want to play the Open, there's also a weekend Congress. There's blitz events going on. There's a lot of fun to be had. There's also like a New Year's tournament, all this kind of stuff. Very nice venue. Very cosy little venue. You can get food upstairs. It's in the Horntie Sports Complex normally. And I believe it's sponsored by Kaplan Investments. It's run by a guy I know called John Ashworth, sorry. And he's also a very nice guy. So that's a Hastings chess club. I played there many, many years. I think one of the first years I played actually was one of the first FIDE rated tournaments I played was at Hastings, and it was in the summer tournament in 1995 or something like that. And I seem to remember actually the deputy head of that school got into a bit of trouble involving his stepdaughter. So after that happened after that. But I went to this school. We played in the school, and Mickey Adams was playing, and he was like the top seed, I think, in that tournament. There were also players from Russia and Ukraine playing there as well. I played Rashovsky, Kim Rashovsky from Russia, and I lost to him in about 17 moves in a Clarendon Court variation. I was unrated at the time. So I kept, and then I kept coming back. I played I even played, there was a tournament once I played on the pier. It was very cold. I lost my first 2 games. Then I won 5 in a row. Then I lost to Yannick Pellissier in a bayonet attack, King's Indian. Very nice game. But I played one year, and I played Keith Arkell. I want to have a look at this game, actually, and talk about this game. If we can find this game. And I was black in this game. And I was playing against Keith, who I first played in a tournament. I think I've got about a 4-2 minus score against Keith in classical games. But we haven't had a decisive game for nearly 20 years, which is crazy, right? Or over 20 years. I think the last time anyone beat each other in a classical game, we've had a lot of draws. Not all of them have been quick draws. Some of them have been fought out. I think we haven't played that much, but we played a fair bit. And one of the games I lost to Keith was a tournament in New York. Maybe that was the last time either of us beat each other. I did 2 of the games I beat Keith in. One was in the Warley-Quimborne tournament. And that's when I first got to know Keith, started chatting to him. He was very kind after games, started chatting to me. I thought, well, that's weird, because normally GMs, they're very kind of cagey. They don't talk to you much. Hebden was also quite friendly as well, right? And I thought these guys are a bit unusual, because most GMs, they won't even chat to me. They just think, oh, who's this guy? He's coming up. Don't want to chat to him. Blank him, ignore him. Hopefully he'll go away in a few years, right? And but those guys were very friendly, and they helped me a lot throughout my chess career, actually. And Keith helped to get me into things like the French League. In fact, I played a lot more chess back then, around about this period, kind of 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001, that kind of period. I played a lot more chess. And but yeah, I played him. I beat him the 2 games I beat Keith in were a Warley-Quimborne tournament in 1997, and also a Holy City tournament that Charlie Story ran, which I believe was something like 1998. But both were great games. Unfortunately, I've lost a score of at least I think maybe the Holy City one I've still got, but the other game I've lost a score of. I'll have to ask Keith about that to even up the scores. But let's have a look at the game anyway. And Keith plays a G3 Kings in. He's had a lot of success with this line over the years. Yeah, so there's a number of ways you can play against this. One of the classical ways is to take. But Knight C3 is very standard. And then Keith took. And he played Bishop F4. And I played the move Queen A5, which I guess I do remember vaguely that I studied this line at the time. I had a game against Barbarian as well in the tournament in Ireland where I lost horribly. I vaguely remember I played Queen B6 in that game, and he went Queen B3, and then he ended up taking and going B3, and I just had a horrible structure. There was something horrible happened in that game. He completely outplayed me, and also another very strong player, right? Alexander Barbarian played for Ireland on a number of occasions, originally from Russia. Big guy as well, like wouldn't want to meet him in a dark alley. Keith is not physically as big, but he can be as intimidating over the board. By the way, it's interesting. One of the reasons I wanted to show this game is I actually completely forgot about this game, and Keith only reminded me of it a few weeks ago. And you know, I really, honestly, I think he keeps a lot of his score sheets. I wish I'd kept more of my score sheets over the years. Lots of games from my past. I don't know if you've had this problem. There's lots of games from my past that I've simply forgotten about, and it's almost like missing time. Even this period of my life, I really don't recall it that well. I don't recall what I was doing most days. I think I was just dossing around in London, a bit like now. Now I'm dossing around in North East. But I wish I'd, pardon me, I wish I'd gone after it a bit more. You know, I think if I'd spent, I had that time, I was a professional chess player. I could have spent 4 or 5 hours a day studying chess. I didn't. I could do that now, of course, as well. But I think when you're younger, it's probably more potent to do that because you've got all that energy, you've got that ambition. I wish I'd done. I think I would have got the 2600. I eventually got the 2570, but that was later. That was like late. So I got the IM title 1997, and I was obviously a good player, but I think there was a lot of stuff I didn't know in chess, as we'll see in this game. So Queen A5, Knight E5. Interesting move by Keith. Apparently this is still some kind of theory. And Knight D4 is indeed. I don't know if Keith knew that this was theory. I doubt it. He doesn't tend to be a big theoretical guy, to say the least. He claims he doesn't do a lot of study, which is probably true. But I think he probably does a little bit more than he lets on. You know, like a lot of players like to give the impression they do nothing at all. They know no theory. You know, the more of that impression you can give, the more intimidating you become to play, because people think, wow, this guy's just a genius, right? He just does no work on chess at all. By the way, Keith came to chess quite late. When he was, I believe he learned the game when he was 15, which is incredible, right? And him and his brother learned how. Brother's slightly younger than he is, Nick. But Nick ended up becoming a successful businessman. Keith ended up being a chess player. Well, you can guess who's probably got a bigger bankroll now, you know? It's probably not Keith, but Keith's had a very happy life. Had a very unique life. So, I don't think he has any regrets on that score. I think there was a story that he was on this bus. He was going to a factory, and he decided to get off the bus. He decided he wanted to do this day job. He'd rather be a professional chess player. And it's an exciting life, you get all these different experiences you probably never get if you just work your whole life in an office. On the other hand, it's also financially not always that well supported. So there's upsides and downsides. But yeah, I think every chess player is kind of like in the same boat. Every professional chess player is kind of like in the same boat. They kind of gravitate towards chess, but not necessarily because they love doing chess. Or that is part of it, but it's also the fact that they don't feel comfortable doing a day-to-day job. They don't feel comfortable with a, with somebody telling them what to do, blah, blah, blah. So after knight d4, the best move is bishop d2, queen c7, and then knight d3. So either Keith's an idiot savant, or he was finding all the best moves, right? Bishop f5. It's probable that he'd had this before this game. I don't recall any of this theory, I'll be honest. I vaguely remember it up to queen a5, but this stuff. But now he goes e4, which is the suboptimal move. According to the theory, bishop f4 is more known. So he goes e4, which is not that well known. And I went bishop g4, which is a good move. And he went f3. I went bishop e6, and Keith went knight d5. Now I have vague memories of this game, and I do vaguely remember thinking at the time that my position was quite reasonable. I think you should relieve the pressure. Taking with a bishop looks correct, right? Although the rook will come to c1, which is a slight problem. What else? You don't want to move the queen. You could move the queen. I mean, I've never analysed this game in any detail. A bit like all my other games. That's probably why I never got to Super GM. Because I didn't do a very kind of naval gazing that you need to do to get to that level. Well, that's a terrible move for a start because you're just dropping c5, right? So that's not a good move. You can't go to a5. You can't go to d6. So it feels right. I don't really like taking with a knight. I could take with a knight. That's probably more realistic. But I guess you take with you don't want to take with that pawn because you're allowing a bishop f5. But if you take with that pawn, then the bishop will drop back. How bad is this? Doesn't look great, but maybe it's not that bad. I guess rook c1 could be played, which threatens to take on c5, right? So how is this? I mean, you don't lose the bishop pair in this variation, but white seems to have quite a lot of pressure. But maybe I can just continue with b6 and say, look, what have you got, kind of thing. Not sure I like this very much for black, but I'm just wondering about a line like b4, and then black could either consider bishop b5 or c4, right? Maybe there's other moves, I don't know, but b4, it feels like you're kind of down to two choices, right? You either go c4 or you go bishop b5, and I'm not sure what the evaluation is. So b4, bishop b5, maybe bishop f4 then. Interesting to, think how much I saw of this during the game. I don't recall thinking about this at all, any of these variations. I don't even remember the game, right? Until recently, I didn't even recall I played this game. Which shows a terrible memory. You're hearing about all these super GMs. They remember games they played like, when they were 2 or something. I can't even remember a game I played when I was an adult. Never mind the moves. I can't even remember that I played the game. I just wiped it from my memory back because it was so stressful. But after b4, you can go c4 maybe. So bishop b5, bishop f4. And then white will get to take on c5. So maybe b4 to c4, but that looks a little bit suspicious. Maybe not knight b2 because of knight f3 maybe. Knight takes f3. But after b4 c4, still bishop f4 might be an issue. Bishop f4 and then he would come into e5. I remember thinking, I do remember thinking when I played Keith around about that period that he was a very good positional player and he would always find a way to really pose you awkward problems. It was really tough to play him because he was very good positionally and was very good at solving positional problems. So he would find a line like b4, c4, bishop f4, no problem, and then the knight will jump into e5 and then it will expose the knight on d4 or something like that. Maybe it doesn't work, but, he will find something like that. So something like b4, c4, bishop f4, and if you go queen d8, I go knight e5. And if you go g5, I go queen d4, gf, gf, and there's nothing great there for black. So, yeah, so I took the bishop anyway, long story short. He took the pawn. And I went e6. Now, thinking about it now, why can't he go... I must have had something prepared after d6, right? Actually, I do remember maybe being concerned about him going d6. Was there another option? Maybe I could have gone knight d7. Or even... I mean, is e5 ridiculous? I guess it is, right? Yeah, e5, f4 maybe? Or rook c1, I guess. Rook c1, I think he'd play. And then if b6, then b4. The problem is that black doesn't have a lot of counterplay, so e6 kind of feels like a natural move. I mean, you could play a bit like knight d7, just containing, but then the white centre might rumble forward like f4, right? So I went e6. Can he go d6 there? Was that an option? Or not a good option? Is there a tactic here that I'm missing? This kind of looks a bit scary for black. But maybe queen b6 might be an issue. Because now c4 is a threat. And maybe you don't have time for something like e5 consolidating the pawn structure. So bishop e3. Then maybe knight d7 is possible. Or even c4 anyway, but then there's knight e5, queen b2, bishop d4, right? So what happens? Maybe here the problem is that you can go here, maybe, and you're holding this. Yeah, it still feels a bit ropey for black, but he took anyway, which feels like a reasonable decision. Although maybe d6 was critical, I'm not sure. I could have taken with a pawn, I guess, but I probably didn't really consider it. Weakens my king. This pawn is now weakness. On the other hand, I will get a lot of activity. I'll get rook d8 in, right? I guess rook c1 will just be played automatically. Now, how do I deal with a problem like rook c1? Sounds like a musical, right? How do we deal with a problem like Maria? I'll sing my Maria song in a minute. Actually, I'll sing it now. Shall I sing it now? It's like when I first saw Chief. He's the chief, the chief of chess. Keith the Chief. Yeah, that's a good nickname, actually. I don't know why nobody ever came up with this nickname. Keith the Chief of Chess. When I first saw Keith's chess game, it's how the guy felt in the musical, you know, when he says, Maria, the most beautiful sound I ever heard. Maria, Maria, all the beautiful sounds of the world in a single word. Maria, 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 just met a girl named Maria, and suddenly I found how wonderful that word can be. Maria, just met a girl named Maria, and suddenly I found how wonderful that word can be. Maria, say it loud and there's music playing. Say it soft and it's almost like praying. I'll never stop saying Maria. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. I think that film came out in 1960. It was by Leonard Bernstein, right? Or the score. Was it directed by? Maybe it's directed by Leonard Bernstein as well. But there's a film out recently, actually, starring Bradley Cooper about Leonard Bernstein. I think it's called Maestro, because that's a name that they use for, you know, successful, famous composers is Maestro. And yeah, great songs from that musical, right? Recently redone by Steven Spielberg. And I believe Maria in that film was played by Natalie Wood. And yeah, so she was also in The Searchers with John Wayne. She plays like this white girl who gets captured by Indians. American, who gets captured by American Indians. And John Wayne tracks her down. Anyway, I'm babbling again as usual. I'm probably bored by the game. But F-takes is probably not that bad. I took it a knight. He went bishop c3. I went rook fd8. Again, doesn't look terrible what I'm doing here. Doesn't look terrible. Yeah, and I went c4 here. Maybe I could have considered knight d4. I think I remember being surprised by his next move. Yeah, maybe I could just play. I think now I would consider a more patient approach. I think back then I was just like, you know, let's just play, you know, aggressively on every opportunity, right? Although, to be honest, what I played doesn't look that bad, right? I went rook c8. Is that feels maybe wrong? Maybe not right. I don't know. But he's got a very strong planner going f4, right? So, for example, if I went b5 here, he goes f4, b4, bishop f6, e5. And then he directly hits a8. So maybe that was my idea behind rook c8. Could I go rook d3 here, maybe? And then but then after f4, I need a good move. So this is the kind of position where probably a computer would come up with something quite reasonable for black, but for a human being, it's not easy to deal with problems of the position, right? Computer would probably come up with some stunning, amazing idea and make us all look stupid. Could I go rook d3, but then he goes f4, right? I don't seem like I have anything that great there. Yeah, Maria, that was also set in America, so I'm in New York at the moment, yeah. So, yeah, it was kind of, maybe is h5 ridiculous? The idea of f4, knight g4? Maybe it is. It kind of feels wrong there. Also, his knight is doing a very good job of covering the e3 square. So tricky to play this. G5 feels like it's going to run into knight e3, right? G5 looks ugly. Yeah, I could move the knight immediately with the idea of exchanging dark square bishops immediately. Here's another option. But where do you move the knight to? You could go to d7. You could go knight d7, f4, bishop c3, bc3. And then play from there. I mean, I don't know how bad is that. But also the other danger is the knight will come into d5. So maybe Keith was already starting to get a better position around about here. It's hard to say. Maybe a5 is also wrong. Maybe there was other options. I'm on about knight d4. Maybe the problem is, yeah, I'm afraid that his knight will come into d5. These are kind of positional problems that Keith would give you back in those days. Obviously not now. Now he's a lot weaker, right? It's different now. But back then he was a good player. He actually got, I think Keith had a kind of similar career to me because I was like, in a way, because I was like a late developer as well, you know. So when I was like 15, it was the same time that Keith learned chess. I've been playing for several years. So I learnt when I was about 7. But I first went to a chess club when I was about 10 or 11, Charlton Chess Club, and I was grinding away there for years without making much progress. And suddenly I was shot up from around about the age of 13, 14, 15. I suddenly went up to, you know, so I think for about 3 or 4 years I was going nowhere. I was like, you know, plateauing completely. I looked like I was going to be a very ordinary chess player. You know, end up being like a 160 or 170 player. But then I suddenly just shot up. And I got to IM level by the time I turned 21. I was like the most improved player in the country. I think Keith had a similar career trajectory. He didn't really play any junior chess or much junior chess. I think because of that is why a lot of time he posts about stuff on Facebook, because I think he feels kind of overlooked, you know, as a chess player for a number of years. He never got in the England team, which he could well have got in the England team. You know, he was on the par with a lot of players who did get in the England team. Maybe ahead of those players. He could have won the British Championships on other occasions. He tied for first with Stuart Conquest on one occasion, but lost the playoff. So, yeah, I mean, we both had a similar kind of career, and I think Keith was a late bloomer and ended up getting 4 GM norms in a row when he was, I think, in his early 50s, around about 2014, 2000, which is a phenomenal achievement. I think it's hard. I know from experience how hard it is to get 1 GM norm. To get 4 in a row is amazing. So it shows the level that he was playing at that point. He was basically playing at 2600 level at that point. If he carried on playing at that level, you know, great things could have happened. But obviously a little bit older then. I think if he'd done maybe put the work in when he was younger, he could have got to 2600. Not necessarily the work, but just maybe gone after it a little bit more, played a few more tournaments. Maybe like hired a trainer or something like that. I think I had the same thing, you know, going back to this period, you know, I wasn't going after it. I could have got to 2600. I could have been a contender. Terry, I could have been a contender. Oh, no, it was Terry. It was Terry's brother. It was Terry who said that to his brother, wasn't it? I think, in On the Waterfront. Marlon Brando. Rod Steiger. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. So I went rooks here anyway, and yeah, from memory I didn't like this position at this point. I went knight d5. I feels a little bit shaky for black. I mean, is there even, maybe you could just win a pawn, right? Why didn't he just take a pawn? It's like a free pawn going here. It's quite sad. I thought I'd come up with some improvements here, but it seems like you can't improve on, you know, Einstein's theorem or something, you know, Newton's theorem. You can't improve when you play Keith. He's just so good. Keith the Chief. Queen C4. Must have been something that Keith didn't like. It's probably stuff concerned with down the sea file, right? On the waterfront down the sea file. Maybe there's a move like knight c3. And if you take with a queen, if you take with a pawn, you run into stuff down the c file. Maybe a move like knight e6 or queen b6 is also a possibility. In fact, queen b6 immediately might have been the reason Keith rejected this, because it kind of looks a bit shaky down the c file. But there is bishop d4. You know, pinning. Also possible. And I think the idea is if you take, then maybe there's a check. Yeah, knight e6 might be good. Well, there's still bishop d4 there as well, right? Knight d4, queen d4, knight d4, rook d5, move the knight. Well, none of that happened anyway, because Keith took. He took, and then he ends up winning a pawn anyway. Yeah, so he ends up winning a pawn this way. And I got, yeah, I think at this point in the game I became very depressed. And I realised I was in trouble. And I'm losing the pawn. I've been outplayed by the positional genius. Yeah, so don't like this position. Now I'm a pawn down. I've been outplayed. So I went knight a4. Knight d6. He took. Oh, sorry, I took. Yeah, but this is desperation derby, right? I had won my pawn back, but then he wins the pawn anyway. Yeah. And then knight a5, I guess I was ready with rook a7 and a knight's trap. That was my plan. He goes a4. I went a4. What about f6? Was that an option? But f6, the problem is, I guess, e6, right? e6, and then rook e7. Let's have a look at that variation here. Yeah, I'd like to... Yeah, Keith very clever at stopping me from controlling that rank. If I go here, he can take on a5, but then I take. You know, realistic drawing chances, I think. But if rook e1... I think I vaguely recall around about this point. Yeah, it's funny how the game, the memory of the game, or what you were thinking, comes back to you when you look at the game again. Now, I think I vaguely remember thinking that I was getting, you know, getting some chances, or maybe Keith wasn't playing in the most accurate way. But having said that, you know, he's still pawned up, so you got to prove something here. And maybe this is just an extra pawn. I mean, you can go rook c6, but then maybe knight a5, and then white will get to check on b8. Probably rook c6, or f5 is another option. But f5, can you... if you take on a5, there's maybe issues with rook to c5, maybe, or rook to c5. There's knight b3, right, or rook check. So maybe you can get away with taking this pawn. You can take on g3 and take there, but I assume that's bad. There's knight c6. Yeah, so a very complicated ending, but I think maybe there was another option was to just... Keith would have probably played his favourite chess move, g5, right? The g5 was possible. And it feels like at this point in the game, you know, I've got some chances. Maybe it's not enough, but also maybe I'm threatening to take and go rook d4. My rooks are quite active. Yeah, I don't think it's realistically enough for the pawn, but there might be some practical chances. He could go back to d6, weirdly enough. And then if I take on f4 and go f6, there might be a knight e4 in there somewhere. Or just rook check. Oh yeah, so if I knight e6, take on f4, f6 as rook b8, bishop f8. Sorry, hang on. Sorry. take on so knight d6, take on f4, take back, f6, rook b8 check, bishop f8, e6, maybe. And then if rook d6 is e7, and you get to queen. So still suffering for black. And if I take on f4, yeah, so maybe f6 is a better try. So I'm not quite active. h5 was another possibility. Maybe h5, h4. Trying to utilise this rook. I feel like maybe if there's something, it's around about here. I went a4. Trying to defend the port. h5, h6 looks way... Why did I go h6? That looks wrong. But having said that, I mean, now I would at least go h5. I mean, why am I going h6? That makes no sense whatsoever. Very strange move. It's funny how when you look at old games, you're like, why did I play that move? But still, the position looks bad here anyway, and my bishop's passive. If I go bishop f8, he's got knight e4. Seems to be a clear extra pawn for white. So somewhere earlier I must have gone wrong. Okay, so we went into this rook and pawn. Eventually, which Keith managed to win. He went knight f6, clever move, right? So I'm thinking, yeah, I don't want to move the king. He's got too much activity. Maybe I should have moved the king to f8. Very difficult to play this position for black. I wouldn't beat myself up for losing this endgame. Yeah, so Keith went across, he took that. And I think initially I thought, oh, I might draw this, but then I sort of realised that my king was too far away from the main kind of, you know, dark sort of action. a4, excellent move. Rook a1, king b3. Keith's very good endgame player. He's well known. He's got a very, very scary reputation in endgames. One of the best endgame players around. And he's always, I think he said that in his book, that he had some game where he was fascinated by the variations, and he started to realise he was becoming very good in endgames. And that was in an early part of his career. So ever since then, he's been very good at endgames. Known to be like a good grinder, right? Not everybody has that ability. He just went a5 and king b4. Unknown, it says. So it's already in the kind of like table base. Rook g4. And then I think I must have resigned while Keith was thinking about his move. I must have worked out the variations. I would be incapable of doing that now, because I'm too lazy. But I guess if you go, say, rook f2, g5, a6, rook f4, gf4, a7, to give a crude variation, white will get there first. So the question is, yeah, I mean, how do you start that a pawn is a very difficult question to answer. So if rook f2, rook g1, there is rook a2 as well. But then rook will go back to g4, right? I think Keith as well is very confident on the board. I think it kind of intimidated me. He's very confident in the way he plays his moves. He's very, you know, very self-assured. He's got a very good temperament. I think I found that a bit intimidating. But I think, although, you know, the endgame is interesting, I think you'd have to go back to somewhere in the middle game. I think at some point in the middle game I was probably doing okay. But then I got outplayed. And maybe after knight b4, it feels like, yeah, maybe knight d4 or some weird move. Bishop f8 is another option as well, maybe. I feel like a play should be somewhere around b5. Maybe a5. Okay, what was wrong with b5 again? He goes here, right? Okay, let's just try and make this work somehow. But maybe we can't make it work. b4, bishop f6, right? I don't like that. Oh, I don't like that. I could be the knight now. I could be the knight. Let's computer check it. Let's computer check it. I'm obviously incapable of finding any improvements myself. Well, I'm enabling it now, man. Right, I'm okay. Request a computer analysis. Where we're doing big improvements. How accurate was the game? I'm going to guess Keith's accuracy was 97%. And mine was probably about 93%. Let us have a look. No, mine was nowhere near 93%. Keith's was lower than 97%. It says here that Keith was 92. I was 89, so we were both rubbish back then. So up to a point, it was all fairly normal, kind of following the theory. Yeah, E4 feels like a decent move, right? And he went 95. Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. Maybe taking with a knight was actually possibly better than you realise, because you do, when you drop back to D7, you have the option of going bishop to B5. You do lose the bishop pair this way. The computer doesn't like that move. Doesn't like taking with a bishop. And knight D7, that was, I think already white is quite a lot better. So this G3 King's Indian is a hard nut to crack. As he says, Rook C1 here is tremendous. Big advantage. And then you get some variation like this. And then E5, right? Very bad for black. I'm coming down with something actually. Let me just pull this in a little bit. Yeah, Rook C1 is tremendous. Yeah, maybe I even saw Rook C1 in the game and I was worried about it, but who knows. Knight D7 was a better move, and then you get something like this, and at least you hold the fort on in the centre, but the position remains kind of passive, right? How does that work out? So you can, for example, you can take, and then take. So what about my D6 option? That was also quite a reasonable option, but maybe not as good as Rook C1. Maybe slightly better. Yeah, I think taking was a little bit too straightforward. Not the best. I think Keith likes simple positions, though. He likes to play. He doesn't like murky positions, so he probably wouldn't have liked keeping attention centre. I think he likes simplistic decisions and going for end games, and you know he understands a lot of positions very well. I could have taken with a pawn, but we didn't think that wasn't a very good option. Taking with a knight was correct, yeah. I went Rook FD8. I went C4. He went. Actually, black is already better now. Wow. So Knight D4 is kind of an option, right? And Knight D5, and then the idea of just take. So if you get now goes F4, but then that's running into Knight G4, right? And I guess I'd probably, maybe if I saw something like this, I would have been very afraid of something like this. But no, that's totally ridiculous. Rook D5, yeah. Yeah. Right, that's very interesting. If I go here, then A5. And then it suggests crude play with A4. And then, yeah. So, Knight D5 was much better. A5 was not a good move. That was a mistake. And yeah, I think here, I think if I had this position again, I would probably go Rook D3. I was suggesting like B5 looks more normal, like F4. And then, yeah, something like Knight D7, yeah. It's not a great position, but it's like, how does he continue? Does he go F5? I mean, if he goes F5, then you're not taking, are you? Can you take? You can actually take, right? Take. This is why it's so important to be able to calculate well and be happy to go into murky positions. I might have seen this, thought this can't be good. D7's hanging, F7's hanging with check. You know. So maybe that was why I backed off B5. But B5 felt more natural. I think that was a little bit passive. Knight C5, yeah. I think I was just afraid of this attack with B5. I just got scared. Like, of course you should play B5. I mean, Knight C5 is a horror move. And I'll be honest with you now, I think if I play this game now, I wouldn't have gone Knight C5. I would have played B5 because it just looks more natural. I don't know, I think back then I couldn't calculate very well. I could calculate quite well in some positions, but other positions, if I was worse, I would just crack up. So we were saying before, why can't he go? I think he made the right decision. Yeah, taking. Yeah, you lose the dark squares and you're better, but yeah. But I took, he took there, which is absolutely correct. Queen c4 was better. Knight c4 was actually a mistake, interesting. And knight a4 was the correct decision. Queen b6, all correct. Taking correct, knight here. Rook d5, not rook d7. But rook, yeah, still okay. Yeah, so bishop f8 was f6 was bad. F6 is just bad, right? g5, bad. Bishop f8. And if he takes, then bishop a3, wow. Just holding up that pawn. So even though you're 2 pawns down, it's not that easy. I mean, how do you consolidate here as white? Because if you go, yeah, you're going to lose the second rank. This is very important tactical understanding you have to demonstrate. So if you go rook b3, you go bishop c5, and then rook c2. Not easy to see that bishop a3 is the key idea. Funny enough, Keith had a couple of games recently where I think he fell for a bishop a3 trick. So maybe he's got a weakness around the a3 square. It's like I've got an obscure weakness around the a3 square. He can't visualise his bishop a3 moves. So if you ever play Keith, watch out for a bishop a3 tactic. But yeah, I think very important that I would get access to 7th rank. That will clearly give me very good counterplay. So it would have been interesting to see how Keith would have responded if I found it. I didn't find that line in the game. Very tough to see. But you think about this bishop, it makes logical sense because this bishop is not active. And f6 is running into e6. g5 doesn't really make the bishop any more active. Bishop f8 does clearly make... I think maybe I did consider that in the game, but just rejected it. I just saw knight a5, didn't see a good follow-up. Probably didn't consider this obscure move, bishop a3, right? Knight d6, excellent move. Rook b1, another excellent move, the best move. Knight e8 was not a good move. Rook b8 was good. King g2. Yeah, and you kind of, yeah, his bishop is kind of dominate. You can't go to g7, very important. I think Keith, like I say, if he has a weakness, I think he's, you know, that he doesn't necessarily like going for murky tactical solutions. He likes clear-cut solutions. So he would have just gone, right, knight e8, get this endgame on the board where you're a pawn up. But you should keep the tension in. Not an easy move to see. You just go rook c8. And if you go rook b8 now, and then rook c2, just keep the tension again. Yeah, tough. To be honest, it's tough to see all this. I probably should have seen it, but yeah, it's tough. Even now, I'm not sure I'd find this defense. Very clever defense. And then, for example, if you trade. And then take on g7. But now black is okay because this rook is active enough. And it's very important you can't go to b4 because of rook check and rook c2 and take. And then black is holding that endgame. So yeah, very tough to see all this, to be fair. Yeah, but I went for the straightforward move. Lacking any subtlety or any skill. Very poor game by me. Maybe I was tired. It's round 9, right? I didn't realise we played this game so late in the tournament as well. It was round 9. So was that the final round? Or maybe there was one game after this? I think from memory it was the final round. And Keith ground me down. And this is possibly holdable. It didn't like knight f6. So see again, I think maybe slight weakness in Keith's play is that he doesn't like keeping the tension, or maybe miscalculate this and he didn't realise that it was actually holdable for black, or probably just realised that I wouldn't hold it. That's probably the most relevant. You know, my technique would just be too poor. It's the same as a draw. Obviously, I never studied endgames, right? I never really studied rook and pawn endgames because I didn't know how to hold it. You know, I didn't have the Dvoretsky manual. I did study the Dvoretsky books, but I didn't study them maybe well enough or deeply enough to know all these rook and pawn endgames. I still don't know a lot of them now. I think I found them boring compared to middle games. So even this game, I'd rather analyse the middle game or the opening than analyse the rook and pawn. We barely looked at the rook and pawn. Rook b6 was a good move. I went rook c6. That's not bad, actually. But then why go active? Yeah, just wait. So I guess the point is, now if you go a3, what is the point? Because his threat is now to slowly bring the king over, right? But now you should activate. You should start to create counterplay on the king side. I'd like to say that these days I would do that, but it's hard to say. I mean, my rating now is similar to what it was back then, right? I'm only 20 points higher than I was back then. And I'm a lot older. But yeah, and then you're clearly going to get a counterplay. If you go king d2, I'll take on f4, go king g6 to f5. It's going to be hard for white to hold the fort on the king side. You know, so are you even better? Like, yeah, I mean, like here, king g6. I mean, you know, you're not better here. I mean, well, sorry, hang on, mouse slip. In fact, the computer's starting to prefer black. Incredibly. Even though white's pawn up in the rook and pawn. Because the king activity, so important. Incredible resources that I'm overlooking. Rook c1 was a horror. Rook d2 was not the most accurate. So quite a bad game by both of us. Probably we were both tired. Long tournament. a3, that's obscure to find. Hard to find a3. I mean, rook d2, I probably would have played that as well. You're securing that second rank. Probably a good move anyway. Even the computer doesn't agree with it. g5 again. Why am I not playing Keith's favourite move, g5? I don't think I would go h5 now. I don't think. I think actually experience means more than you realise, because I think I would just automatically play g5 now. I mean, h5 is a very strange move. I don't understand that at all. And then again, you got to find a counterplay on the king side, right? And you can maybe make a draw. Why am I playing this move? It's just crazy. I think I saw that I could go h4, and I wanted this pawn to be weak first before I went h4. But then I started to realise, actually, when I got here, I started to realise that you know, if I take the time to attack this pawn, it's going to be too slow. So I did do that. And now it says rook f2, for example, a variation could like rook f2, rook g. Yeah, on a higher depth, it's winning, right? Like here, you just push, and then the rook would not get back in time. You have to give up the rook. Like rook e4, rook e8, and then queen, and it's trivial win, because the king will get back in time to stop the pawns. That's probably kind of what's going to happen the whole game, right? Like rook b1, king c5. Check, king b6. Yeah, this is winning. Funny enough, weirdly enough, I actually had a very similar endgame many years later. It shows how many times I played Hastings many years later, and only a few years ago at Hastings against Adam Taylor. He's like a young player, like an IM level. Is Adam an IM? I can't remember. I think he's a good player anyway. He's kind of stopped playing now. He doesn't really play much. Well, I had the outside A pawn, and I managed to grind him down in a long endgame. So it's funny how, like, you know, life turns around, right? And that was, I think that was a Hastings where I finished equal first. So I think in the challenges, I finished equal first. I think there was one year where I finished outright first. And there was another year where I finished equal first. The year where I finished equal first, I probably should have won it outright because I was winning against Kajatson last round, but I wasn't able to convert a winning endgame. Didn't have sufficient technique to win it. But yeah, that was an interesting game. Yeah, me and Keith have always been good friends over the years. I think the thing is, in the chess world, it's a very small world. You know, people have the same experiences. You're obviously going to find some people you gravitate to more than others, depending on your personality. But you're generally going to get to know a lot of people. You know, I'm good friends with Simon over the years, Mark Hebden, John Naylor was a good friend of mine. John was at the first tournament I played, Keith, which was at It was at the old Chess and Bridge Centre in Euston. It was run by Chris Dunworth. Keith got 8 out of 9. I remember I played him I blundered a rook. And overlooked. Oh, it wasn't really a blunder. It was just like I overlooked the fact that it was attacked more times than I was defending it. Right? Something stupid. And John Naylor, I think, sat in on the post-mortem from memory. Yeah, good memories, yeah. But it's like so much of my life is like a blur, you know, so much of my life back then. And I wish I'd done more stuff. So I'm trying to turn my life around and do more stuff now. And that's partly why I'm doing YouTube. You know, you don't realise, you don't know how long you've got left. It could be that I might live for another 30 years, or it could be that I might live for another 10 years. You just don't know, do you? So, yeah. I'm going to start crying in a minute as I'm getting very sentimental. But yeah, so that was Hastings. I'm playing Hastings again this year. And it's more prize money this year. Hopefully they'll get a better turnout. There's 10 prizes. It's very tough when there's only 6 or 7 prizes, which we've had in the British Championships on quite a few occasions. And Hastings. We can only win 6 or 7 prizes. And that's hard because it really puts the pressure on you to do well, you know. But if there's 10 prizes, you feel like if it's a reasonable field and it's not too many players, then you feel like you should really win a prize. So anyway, that's Hastings, and look forward to playing again this year. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. I'll probably be doing more of these sentimental videos because I actually quite enjoy doing these sentimental videos and talking about, you know, my past experiences as a chess player. It's almost like a video kind of autobiography, if you like. And it's almost like, well, you know, like these footballers when they get paid to like sit in the kind of, you know, like beer halls and chat about their past experiences, like as footballers. I'm doing the same with chess, right? But yeah, please like and subscribe, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video.